your financial goal?
You want more money? Turn what you know into dough. Start hanging out with the people who have it. You create wealth on your own terms. It is not only your rights, but your duty to build wealth.
You are fiscally fabulous,
And it's time to enjoy your legacy.
You're listening to Fiscally Fabulous with Dr. Teresa R. Martin, Esquire, a podcast that aims to provide you with the tools, guidance, and encouragement you need to build your wealth, enjoy your wealth, and leave a lasting legacy. Dr. Martin is an accomplished attorney, speaker, business consultant, and real estate strategist, an all-around self-made success who provides highly sought-after expert consulting in the creation, growth, and maintenance of generational wealth.
Well, welcome everyone to Fiscally Fabulous Podcast, where we empower you with the tools and strategies to scale your business and achieve that financial independence. You know what we talk about. I'm your host, Dr. T, and today we have a very special guest. We have Philip Auerbach. Okay? Say that 3 times fast, right? And he is the president of Auerbach International, Inc., and the reason why I'm excited today is because Philip's journey, his personal journey from his challenging childhood to becoming a leader in global communication is truly, truly, truly inspiring. And his company empowers individuals, companies, and nonprofits to actually communicate their value across cultural and accurate translation services and interpretation. And I am so excited to have him here because who would have known? We can go global. We can actually do communications and have everything translated for us, and we can do global business. So I am honored to have him here today. So welcome to the show, Philip. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And I really don't want to hold our audience, hostage to what we're going to be sharing. So I'm just going to jump right in. And I'll ask you, Philip, your personal story, is incredibly moving. So can you share how your early experiences influenced your passion for languages and global communication across the board?
Yes, I use the word divorced child. The proper term is child of divorce, but I consider a divorced child. Okay. I am the original divorced child that I ever knew, because my parents divorced. They separated when I was 1.5 and divorced when I was 3. This was in the 1950s, back when these things simply were not done. They were done very rarely, and it was still considered very stigmatized to divorce. And so until I was 11, I knew no other divorced children, absolutely none. And so, of course, it was very, very lonely. But also, I had 2 radically different families. My mother had custody. I saw my father on the weekends, and he lived with his sister, brother-in-law, and their 3 children. So I had a automatic family to go to. But they were very, very different. My mother was very caring and kind and open and supportive and unconditional and loving and just open to the world. And my father was the opposite. He was very rigid and conditional and critical and just again the opposite. He was very loving, but he didn't quite know how to express it in a way that meant anything to me. And so the criticism, the conditionality that whenever I would express an opinion or a feeling, I was wrong or I was imagining it. That couldn't be. That's ridiculous. How could you think that? If I said something negative. So this was my first intercultural experience. And I didn't realize that until decades later, that how can you be within the same family and 2 radically different cultural experiences, even though the parents were the same background? It's not like one was Turkish and one was Greek or something. They would rarely marry anyway. But anyway, they were the same basic culture. So that was very hard for me to manipulate and to understand. And my father was one of the pioneers of the computer industry, actually, and he traveled a lot to Europe primarily in those days. And he would send me postcards from abroad, and he would bring me coins back from his travels. And So I came to realize very quickly that there was a world out there. There was something out there beyond the simple green pastures that, that I knew about. And the other part of it was that it was very difficult to communicate with my father. So I had this irrational thought that if I couldn't communicate with him in English in a way that made any sense, maybe I should try other languages. And I knew no other languages. But this is where the irrationality came from, that he doesn't understand me in English. Maybe we should try something else entirely. So in any case, when I was going into 7th grade, my mother said I had to choose a language for middle school, and I took Latin because my mother told me that I should take Latin because she took Latin when she was in middle school. And from there, I wanted to learn French, and from there I wanted to learn Spanish, and I started to learn other languages, partially with this totally irrational thought that if I can't communicate in English, maybe another language will work. And of course it didn't, but children don't think rationally.
Wow. That's incredible, right? So, and so going into that, then you formed this company and Auerbach International, and your company has been a leader in translation and interpretation services since 1990. I'm thinking.
Right.
Yes. So can you tell us more about your services that your company provides and offers and how they benefit businesses and nonprofits?
Yes. So most people are totally unaware, and most Americans are totally unaware, that English is spoken in only around 28% of the world. Now, that's a huge market. We've got an enormous country here and a huge market, but that leaves 72% of the world where that's open with opportunities. And in addition, there's a wonderful statistic that around 60% of world internet users will only buy when presented with information in their own language.
Mm.
So if you've got a website, or if you're doing anything with the internet, again, if you present something in your own language, people are much more willing, much more open to buy from you. But if you present it in a foreign language like English, and you're trying to market to a German audience or a Portuguese audience or Japanese audience, whatever, that's going to put up immediate barriers. So, this is the reason why it's important to to communicate your value, basically, so that the world becomes your audience, so that you can attract business, so you can attract additional revenue streams, that you can present the benefits of your products or services to other people. And so what we do is to convey your message, whatever it may be, into 120 languages using methods that basically guarantee A+ 100% accuracy. And what that does not mean is that we do not use an AI version. AI, a lot of people are under the misconception that all I need to do is Google Translate and it works. Well, it does work, but the issue is how well does it work? Does it work with accuracy, which it does not, or does it work with mistakes, which it usually does, depending on the language? And if it makes mistakes, and if it makes, sometimes the mistakes are comical, sometimes they're serious, sometimes they're simply wrong. And if the mistakes make you look, and I'll be negative and say second rate, is that the image you want to portray to the world? Are you a second-rate person? Do you have a second-rate company, or do you want to radiate excellence and excellence in quality and precision? And if you do, then it needs to be done in ways that radiate excellence, quality, and precision. And those are methods that we use. And those include, it's a combination of AI and master's level human linguists who speak subject terminology, whether it's real estate or wine or software or law or marketing, whatever it may be. They specialize just as you do in your subject terminology, but they speak it in other languages so that they're able to convey the meaning and the intent and the context of your message.
And I'm really glad you mentioned that because, AI and chat and everything is taken over and everybody's like, that's like the buzzwords now, right? And so everyone thinks that the AI and chat GPT is going to replace the humans, right? You still have to humanize things, right? And you talked about the cultural accuracy and the translation and, how that will affect your success, how they see you, second rate, you know what I mean? Your value, how you translate your value and the intent and purpose, right? And I always think about it, Philip, from the standpoint is it may even be linguistically, I don't know if that's a word, but linguistically correct versus being insensitive, culturally insensitive, right? So it's right, but is it culturally accurate or is it culturally insensitive or sensitive? That's some of the stuff that I really wouldn't know. So some things that I might be accustomed to here in New York may not fly over well on how I translate that or say that over in another, country, if you will. So that's why it makes sense to have those A+ master level, translation services that you offer. Am I like hitting on the head here?
No, that's absolutely right. And let me give you a wonderful story, a wonderful example of this. This is one of my favorite stories. And I've got behind me, I've got binders. And one of them is a whole collection of bloopers of wonderful mistranslated signs from around the world. But one of my favorites is a TV commercial that was made by a Swedish vacuum cleaner manufacturer. And they were first targeting the market in the UK. And of course, they did everything properly, and it was perfectly fine in Britain. And they took that commercial and then took it to the Commonwealth. They took it to Kenya. I saw it on South African television first, then, and it made perfect sense there. And then they thought, all right, this is great. We're going to expand our market. We'll take it to the US. And they brought it to Florida. And they had the commercial in Florida, and it bombed totally because the message, the meaning, I guess, that they said was very simply the slogan, nothing sucks like Electrolux.
Wait a minute.
So, yes. So that very simple word, that is just one word, has a very different meaning in British English to American English. And this is an example of the kind of work we do also when if a company is looking to expand internationally, one of the first advices we give is to ask us to give very cheap insurance. Companies have insurance about liability and personal protection and corporate liability and so forth. Well, a very, very cheap insurance is to ask us to evaluate your company name, your product name, and your slogans in 10 major languages around the world to make sure that it works. So I'll give you another example. And this is one that I'm astonished that they did this, but there's an enormous multi-billion-dollar Mexican bakery company that they came into the US with the same name, and it's called Grupo Bimbo. Now, Bimbo in American English has a rather different negative meaning.
Correct.
But this is the name that they chose. That was their name in Spanish, and they brought it into the US and they didn't change it. Well, to me, this does not make a lot of sense because that's again, what image do you want to portray for yourself? So, when we evaluate, does the company name work? Does the slogan work? Does the product name work in other languages as one of the first steps in doing international business?
Wow.
Welcome to RIA NYC, where eager to learn entrepreneurs become wealthy and happy to teach investors. Nothing happens until you decide to change your life. Oh, and do it in great company. Call us today and build your empire.
You don't think of, wow. And so basically to come to your company and if I want to go, like, say, to Kenya or, Cape Town in South Africa or wherever, so I would basically take my company name that I already have already, right? Or I'm thinking about. Is it something that I already have or something I'm thinking about?
Right. But either one.
Oh, either one. Okay, so either one. And then you would evaluate it to see whether or not that would work over there and if I need to change anything or tweak anything?
Yes, exactly. And some of it's a matter of simple vocabulary, and some of it's a matter of images. For example, Fiscally Fabulous. It's a wonderful name in English, but it's got alliteration, FF. Well,
Right.
that doesn't work when you put it into other languages. You miss the alliteration. So then what do we do? And then I discuss with you, well, do you want me to, shall we translate the words themselves? Or do we come up with a totally new name that may have the same image, but works better in that target language, for example?
Got it.
And I'll
Wow.
some other wonderful examples, and I've done this. Okay, this is slightly pejorative, so I'm trying to be very professional, but I'm going to digress very slightly.
Okay.
So, who was it? I'm just checking to see who did this. But yeah, Honda. I knew it was a car company. Honda introduced a car called Fitta, F-I-T-T-A, and they took it to Sweden. And, one would think that's perfectly fine, except that in the Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian, it is sort of an old language term for, shall we say, women's genitals.
Really?
So not exactly very good. Now,
Correct.
Just, equal opportunity. And the car companies are wonderful about not thinking these things through. Again, billion-dollar companies, and they don't use common sense, the first step. Ford introduced the Pinto car into the United States in the 1970s, and it was fine here. And they took it then to Brazil. Same name, Pinto, totally not recognizing that a Pinto in Brazilian Portuguese slang is, shall we say, shrunken male testicles, shrunken male genitals. Again, not the great name for a car, neither.
Wow.
And another wonderful example, you've heard of the wonderful company IKEA, of course.
Yes.
They wanted to bring a product into the United States, and it was basically a cart with wheels on it, and like a work cart where you could put tools and so forth.
Okay.
And I think it had 2 shelves or something, and they wanted to use the Swedish, the word that they had in Sweden, which basically means full speed, like full speed ahead.
Okay.
They brought it to the United States and not realizing that their name had a slightly different meaning, and it was spelled F-A-R-T-F-U-L-L. Again, not the best name for a product in English. So these are examples of when you take a product or your company name, your product name, your slogan, whatever it is, absolutely ask us or ask a professional language agency to check it first in 10 major world languages to ensure that there's no gaffes. You don't want to be foolish, and you don't want to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, even $1,000, and then decide that you can't use the name because it doesn't work in a certain language.
Wow. And that's a hard lesson. You said the billion dollar companies are messing it up. So, we can, and now the smaller entrepreneurs. So that's a nice transition, because people listening, the audiences listening out there, for new entrepreneurs with limited resources, Philip, right? What are some cost-effective strategies that they can begin to look at, to expand to non-English speakers?
Well, the simplest thing they can do is their website. Now, many people say, I can't translate my website because it's not done. Well, websites are rarely done. They're always being improved or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can't translate my website because we're planning a new update or something. Well, that's fine and not really. So the simplest thing to do is what I call a summary website. You can take your website, and again, it can be, you can do the entire website in another language. You can do what I call an abridged website, which is your the home page, the contact page, and 2 or 3 key product pages. And put those into other languages. And then there's a much simpler way to do it, which is what I call a summary website. Basically, write about your company. Write 1 or 2 pages in a doc file, a Word file, about your company. What makes you special? When were you started? What are your products? What are your services? What are your benefits? What are your advantages? Who is your target market? Just write it out. A very simple 1 or 2 pages. If you'd like to send it to me, I'd be glad to edit it to be sure that it would work in other languages, because sometimes you say some things in English or in American English that you would not say in other languages. And then we can translate it for you into 20 languages. And you put this summary on your website with lots of little country flags, and suddenly people can find you.
Oh.
And not only can they find you, but so there are other techniques that I'd like to mention very briefly. So as I said, to write out your company. So in some cultures, longevity is very valued and youth is not valued, such as in East Asia, for example, longevity is valued. But if you're a young company, okay, there are ways around that. Talk about the expertise of the owners, or talk about the expertise of the, if you have a special process or service or what is your uniqueness, something like that. This is where we have a global marketing division, and we can help craft your message so that it radiates in other countries. Now, Americans often make the mistake of, and I'm digressing for a moment, I'll give you another wonderful story. Americans make the mistake of thinking that what works here works there, and that the way we express something here is the way you express something there, and that is not true. In many cases, it's not true. So many years ago, we had a company from Mississippi that approached us, and they made, who would have thought, they made conveyor belts for mines that take the ore from the bottom of a mine to the surface.
Okay.
It's the coal, whatever you put it, the mine takes it out. And they had, they wrote a brochure, and they basically said something to the effect of, we're the best in our industry. We're number one, and we make belts better than anyone else does. Okay, splendid. And can we please translate that into 7 languages? The answer is yes, we can. But in the retail business, there's the expression, the customer is always right. Well, in our business, the expression is the customer is always right, except when he isn't.
Right.
So,
Okay.
And our job is to protect the customer, to make sure that you shine in whatever country you're going into. So if we had done what this customer in Mississippi had wanted, it would have been an absolute disaster, because most cultures are not braggadocious. Americans are very, I'll say braggadocious. We say we are the best, we're the first,
Yes.
top, we're the whatever we are. And
Yeah.
And other cultures and countries do not like to hear that and don't say that. And their response was, who are you, Disney? Who are you, Microsoft? They're top, they're number one, obviously, but you're not in that league. So why are you saying that you are? So, so this is very critical to know both what to say and how to say it.
Wow. And you hear, and like you said, here in America, that's basically what we're taught, is to basically your message should,
elevate yourself. Talk about how wonderful you are. Well, and maybe you're totally wonderful, but other people don't want to hear it that way.
Wow. And so does that go with product too? You mentioned about the marketing company. So if, when they come to you and if they need that consultation or marketing advice, outside of translation is one thing, but
right.
Does my product or service even work in that area that I'm trying to break into? Like, right. I do real estate and consulting services, right? Helping people start their businesses or whatever. Will that even translate? Will I be able to have a customer base in some of these other, countries? And do you help with that as well?
And we can help with that as well. We can identify countries that you can expand into and initial strategies to get you there. Initial strategies mean, should you partner with another company to do it? Because if you're coming in alone and you're totally unknown, it's often best to piggyback on someone else's coattails, basically. So another company that's well known. So, should you use suppliers or distributors or direct marketing or direct mail or cold calling, or what methods work in other countries that may work here but don't work there? And really, what countries would be open to you, would be best open to you for your product or service? Because, again, another country may be saturated, may have your product or service, they may not need it. Right. Or there may be a market leader that's so well entrenched that it's very tough for you to break in. So maybe, a secondary market might be better for you, might be easier to break into, for example.
Got it. I love it. I mean, I'm really hoping you listeners out there listening, because this is some powerful stuff here. Like, this is really good stuff, Philip. And for U.S.-based companies that might be skeptical about working with an international firm, such as yours or any international firm, what assurances can you provide about the quality and reliability of your services, the translation services and things of that sort? I know you mentioned, which is a top tier, A+ master level. Is there any other thing that we can look at when we're vetting, right? So there's vetting services out there, international or otherwise. What kind of assurances should we be looking for about the quality and reliability of their services?
Okay, so I want to answer your question, but I wanted to bring in another point, if you don't mind.
Sure, sure.
Another service, and this is something that we offer, but again, it's something that companies should look for. And that is that, as I said in the beginning, around 72% of the world does not speak English. And so how do you talk to people if their English is not fluent and your Greek or your Turkish or your Indonesian is not fluent either? And I assume for most of our American audience, their Korean or their Burmese or their Portuguese is not terribly fluent at the moment. So we have a service called OPI, over the phone interpreting. And I want to distinguish between translating is anything written and interpreting is anything spoken. And everyone from presidents to the press corps mixes up the terms. So if you mix up the terms, you're in good company, but interpreting is spoken, translation is written. And it's conveying your thoughts from one language to another, basically. So we have a service called over the phone interpreting, which works 24/7 in 100 languages. And basically it enables you to speak to another person, to a non-English speaker, using a telephone interpreter, three-way conversation. And the interpreter, the client, and the interpreter back to you. So this is another way that you can communicate, that you can get your message across. No, and I do apologize. Now, I wanted to say that. Now I forgot your original question.
No, just basically for those people who are skeptical, right? U.S.-based companies who are skeptical, what assurances do they have about the quality and reliability of services?
Right. So we have been doing this for over 30 years, which is longer than any other language agency under the same ownership and management. So we very much know what we're doing. Our clients have ranged from solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies in a whole variety of industries, from aerospace to zoology. And the reason we serve all of them, and we serve them well, and we serve them with a lot of repeat projects, is that we deliver projects with close to 100% accuracy. And we do it with a hybrid method. So on the translation side, we would use AI. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying that if you use it, it must be done in combination with something else. And that something else is master's level, professionally trained linguists, which means that we use translators or interpreters who have master's degrees in the art of translating or interpreting. They have at least 10 years of ongoing experience. They work only into their native languages so that they know the nuances and expressions and what works and what doesn't. And most importantly, they speak your subject expertise. So if you're in the real estate field, we will use linguists who speak real estate. If you're exporting software, we'll use linguists who speak software. Because as you know, every industry has its own terminology. Accounting, law, whatever it is, has its own terminology that other people outside of it, science, chemistry, other people have no idea what they're talking about. So that's very cool. So by using hybrid method of AI, if we can, when we can't do it all the time. Depends on the kind of file we get, depends on the language and so forth. If we can, we'll use AI, and then we'll also bring in, this person's called an editor, the second translator, the linguist, the interpreter, to review the file to ensure that it's accurate.
Well, and does that work? Are you assigned, like, so if someone comes to your company for services, I guess a part of the onboarding, they get a project manager or what have you, whatever, time zone wise, because I find it difficult, like when you're doing outsourcing and things of that sort, got time zone issues. I can't figure out if it's, 5 p.m. Eastern, is it 5 p.m. Central? Like what time are we looking at? So how is the time zone thing managed as far as, getting timely responses and project completions and, all that when it comes to communication? Is that managed, through your company, yes, like time zone differences?
So we have 2 U.S. offices, one in the East Coast, one in the West Coast, and we have another office in France. So the France office can take care of both European time zones as well as American time zones as well. And we have another office in Brazil, which is basically the same time zones as the East Coast United States. So we handle most of the world, we can handle within the same time zone based on, where you are and where the request is. So time zones are not an issue for us. You send us the file, we will give you a quote. In general, people say, well, how long does it take? And that's a very valid question. And it can take, we estimate 3,000 to 4,000 words per day. So if you look, how many words have you got? That's a very good estimate of how long it would take to do it. And then we get all sorts of wonderful questions like, can you translate our book? Well, yes. What language, please? What language would you like your book in? And could you please send us the file so we can evaluate, what is involved in translating it, so we can give, I'm sorry, how much does it cost to translate my book? Well, thank you, but please send us your book so we can tell you how much it would cost. Right. Sort of like asking, how much does a car cost? Well, it totally depends, right? So we have to receive the person's file in order to evaluate first the languages that you want, and then, of course, what may be involved with the file itself.
And that takes us to the technology, because you mentioned, I'm always thinking about technology, right? Because we're kind of like moving into that space where technology is important in every industry, right? From real estate, checking, on property that's in different states, and things of that sort. So what role, you mentioned AI, but what role does technology play in your translation, marketing, interpretation services? Because how has it improved your offerings and what people should look at as far as, we talked about AI, but what should they be looking at as far as technology and how technology plays a role in that translation interpretation services? I know we touched about it a little bit as far as, not really understanding if it's misspellings or, things of that sort with the AI. So give us a little insight, because what I want to hit home, Philip, is that you're not going to be able to just use technology without the humanization aspect of it, right? So that's pretty much what I'm trying to hit home, because there's so many people out there who will be trying to save $1, okay, and lose their whole business because they have made a colossal fail in doing what they should not be doing. So just give us a little more insight as far as technology, what people should do and what they should avoid when it comes to their business.
Okay. Well, I've given some examples already of especially names, for example, of how not to do the process or how to do it correctly, or what to do, which is basically come to us to evaluate your product name, your company name, your slogan, right, everything else. So we use technology when we can to our advantage. And the technology is basically, we will call it AI, but there's been a form of AI in the language business for at least 20 years or so. It's not called AI, but it's called by other names, such as machine translation or software translation. And on our website, there's a section on our website called Language Solutions. And if you go there, one of the sections will be about leveraging AI and how AI versus human translation, and when it works and when it doesn't. We've translated some interesting passages, for example, from the French book, The Little Prince. And it can show you, if you use AI only, this is how it comes out. And if you use AI with a human translator, this is how it comes out, how it's much improved. So if you use AI alone, again, in many cases, it works well. I'm not denying that it works. It does work. It does work well, especially in Spanish. But the rarer the language, the less precise it will be. And even in Spanish, we did a book, for example, a book by a marketing guru, the #1 branding expert in the world. His name is Ray Perez. We translated his book into Spanish. And one of the sentences in the introduction was, okay, so that's the background. Are you ready to rock and roll? And the AI translated it. Okay, this is the background. Listo para el rock and roll? Are you ready to rock and roll? Well, rock and roll became the literal word rock and roll. That's not, it means, are you ready to begin? Are you ready to go? Are you ready to advance? So this is where you can't rely on AI, even in Spanish, even, a common language and common languages, where you have to do the combination with the human professional translator as the editor to help guarantee the accuracy.
Got it.
For many women entrepreneurs, the struggle is real. We arose becoming stronger with every fight. Wealth is what we built from that together. A wealth of resources, a wealth of knowledge, and a wealth of powerful businesswomen. When you are ready to achieve financial freedom and become fiscally fabulous, call. It will not be wealth that empowered your success. It will be this call. EnjoyYourLegacy.com, 646-437-7139.
And I know we talked about how a small business with limited funds can, start looking at what can they do. And you talked about the website and things of that sort, the summary. But what about, a business just getting ready to start, and they know, like with the end in mind, I know that I want to expand internationally, right? What are the first steps that they should, take to ensure that their message resonates to a global audience? Second, from coming to you, because that's first step. But outside of coming to you, is there any step that they should take, to ensure that their message resonates with a global audience?
All I can think of is just send it to us and ask. Because, the globe is so huge, so I don't know which global audience anyone would want to target. But, I think the first is a general awareness that what works here doesn't necessarily work there. And to be able to come off of your, and I'll be very negative here, to come off of your American arrogance, to think that we're American, we know best what's right for the world, or we know best how to present our product. And what's wrong with you abroad that you're not interested in our product? Or what's wrong with you that you're not adopting our marketing methods or our product the way it is? Well, the moment you go abroad, and even to Canada, for example, you have to park your American arrogance at the door, because first of all, nobody else likes it, and you offend a lot of people just by doing that. And just to realize that there are different ways of doing things, and there are many ways to climb a mountain, many ways up a mountain. One path may be better than another, but there still may be other paths to get you to the top. So, so just to realize that, again, there are multiple ways to do something, and that your product, your pricing, your colors, your design, your packaging, may not work in other countries. And that's what we or other global consultancies can help advise you that, Americans put a lot of stuff wrapped in plastic within plastic within plastic. And that's horrendous for the environment. And other countries don't tolerate that, especially in Europe. So it depends on obviously what your product is, but, so the packaging may have to be redesigned. The colors may not work. For example, in this country, white is considered a color of purity, a white wedding dress, for example. But in East Asia, white is the color of death. So you don't necessarily put your product in white. In this country, it's okay to have 4 of something, like a package of 4 or 4 examples or something like that. In East Asia, the number 4 sounds like the word for death. Just like have in English, SEA and SEE, same sound. It's the same. So 4 and death sound the same or very similar. So they don't have 4 of anything. You have 3 or 5. You don't have 4. So these are examples of where products may need to be repackaged or reconfigured or redesigned or recolored or remade in some way. And you won't know that until you ask, and you won't know that until you try.
Right.
But just be willing to realize that what works here may not work there, that other ways of doing things are just as valid, and they work in that culture, and the assumptions are right in that culture. What works is what assumptions are here are fine. The assumptions there are not fine. Another very quick example, and this is something I really dislike, but I have become accustomed to it. Strangers will write to me, or people will call me on the phone. Hello, Philip. My name is so-and-so. Can you, I'd like to sell you my product. Excuse me, have we ever met before? If we haven't met, why are you calling me by my first name? Now, I know this is very American. This is very American because we assume we just had 4th of July. It's about independence and freedom and equality and breaking down barriers and having no authority above us and all of that. So we want to create an equal playing field where the people rule. Well, that's all fine. That's American values, but that does not work abroad. And in other countries, you're very respectful. Hello, Mr. or Miss or Mrs. So-and-so. Hello, doctor. Hello, professor. You always use a person's title. Not always. It depends on the industry, depends on the country, but it's always safer to use a person's title first and let the person tell you when it's appropriate to use the person's first name. Especially among Germans, for example. If you look at their names, they've got lots of 3-letter degrees after their names. I have no idea what a lot of them are, but they're, professor, doctor, engineer, something. Okay, fine. So this is part of prestige in their society.
Got it.
Wow. So you don't say, hello, Heinz. You say, hello, Professor, Herr Dr. Professor Schmidt or something.
Got it. Wow. And you're right. The American arrogance. It really is. When you start thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, I might be guilty of that. I've done that. So, so I think that is, really something that we need to take into account. This has just been fascinating. So, but finally, I definitely want to be respectful of your time, but I definitely want to ask you, in closing, what advice would you give to small businesses? When I say small, I'm talking about they are just encroaching upon their first 6 figures. They haven't really hit a quarter million yet. What advice would you give to small businesses on maintaining a strong global presence and staying ahead of competition, like being the first to, market, if you will, in some of these things that we've been talking about on this podcast today?
Well, it's not always beneficial to be first. You can come a very close second because the first sometimes introduces a product and makes a mistake. So it's sometimes better to be second and to see what went wrong and then be very quick, to correct the first mistake and then, be better in that way. And again, Americans like to be first. We like to be number one, right? Well, that's fine, but not always. Doesn't always work. Another quick advice I would give is to make a video. Sometimes videos can be very powerful, and videos, videos can tell your story, and they can tell your story in. It can be a minute or two. They don't have to be long videos. Like not. Most people around the world have become like Americans in having a very short attention span. I used to have a podcast called Global Gurus, and one of my wonderful interviewees, who is American, lived in Indonesia, said that Americans have the attention span 1 second longer than goldfish, and I think that's basically true. So you can make a video. Again, it doesn't have to be long, but maybe a minute or so. Introduce your company, introduce your product, and let us subtitle it into other languages. That's another way to introduce your product, your services. Again, your website, summary website. Also, we can get your company registered in other search engines. So Google is prominent here, but other countries, like in Latin America, for example, may have other search engines that are more prominent. So your company name could be translated, for example, fiscally fabulous. Do you want to keep that in English, or do you want to translate the words? Fiscally fabulous in Spanish, .mx or something else, AR for Argentina, something like that. And we can then see how we can get you registered on their search engines. And yes, it will cost a little bit, but people will still find you. It will be easier for them to find you when you project yourself, when you create yourself as a local company, a company with a national brand or national interest, meaning of that country. And again, all it takes is to start. Again, website, perhaps a video, your website, your company name, registered abroad. And remember that we have the OPI service, the over-the-phone interpreting service, so that people call you, you can converse with them in their language. If people write to you, send us their message, send us the email, send us their letter, whatever it may be. We'll translate it quickly from their language into English. We'll translate your response quickly from English into their language. Within a day or two, you can respond to them, and you get it going. And one other quick issue is very important. We have what's called an impersonal business culture. That means that I can be in San Diego and get a call from someone in Maine, or see an ad for someone in Maine. I've never met the person. The product looks good. The price looks good. I need the product. I'll order the product. I know nothing about the company, but I'll order it because it's there and I need it, and fine. In most cultures, what's important is the personal relationship. So to cultivate trust and relationship before you do a lot of business. Now, yes, they may order from you without seeing you if they want your product and service and all of that. But if you want to do serious business and get involved with distributors and suppliers and real heavy marketing, that may require a trip to the country, or it may require at least an introduction. Introduction can come from the American Chamber of Commerce in that country, who know a lot of the players. It can come from the U.S. Commerce Department, and the Commerce Department has what they call country desks. Someone's in charge of Brazil, someone's in charge of Argentina, someone's in charge of Kenya, whatever. They can make introductions for you. Can come from other, there's a wonderful group called the Global Chamber of Commerce based in Phoenix. They can make introductions for you. So introductions are very powerful as a way to facilitate business if you don't know anyone in that country. It's a good way to start. So yes, you can advertise, and yes, people absolutely may buy your product sight unseen, but depending on your product or service, how expensive it is, how, the level that it is, people will want to have a personal relationship based on trust, based on confidence, and based on based on the knowledge that, and this is very important, that you will do whatever it takes to fulfill the contract, even if it's not in the contract. Okay, and I know I'm going on and on, but let me elaborate for a moment. This is a very litigious society.
Yes.
You promised that you would send us, 5 crates of apples to Milwaukee on this day, and they didn't arrive, and I lost a huge sale because I had advertised apples and they weren't there, and I lost lots of money, and I'm going to sue you. Well, thank you very much, but that's not the way things work in most countries. Again, if you want to establish a relationship with someone, you understand, I'm terribly sorry, someone got sick, someone got ill, the plane got delayed, there was a crisis on the ground, whatever it was, a flood, an earthquake, I don't know. I'm sorry I couldn't get my product to you on time. So please forgive me. I'm terribly sorry. How can we make this up to you? What can we do to make it right? And let's continue the relationship. So this is important. You base the relationship. You want to go for long-term based on trust and confidence that the people will do for you, you'll do for them, and that it's based on reciprocity and not necessarily the letter, the specifics of what the contract states.
Got it. And that, wow. Yes, we are in a litigious society. Trust me, I do know that because everybody wants to sue on everything. So, but yes, this has been, oh my goodness. I told you this was going to be a fantastic interview and really just diving into translation and interpretation, just knowing the translation is written and interpretation is spoken. I mean, that with words, it's, plus with admission, right? So that was just really amazing. So thank you so much, Philip, for sharing, your expertise of, on global communication and the importance of accurate translation and cultural sensitivity and all the things that you've shared with us, because you provided our listeners and myself invaluable insights on expanding their audience and impacting more people. That's what we want to do, right? More impact. Absolutely. So where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more or get in touch with you? What can they do?
Well, our website is auerbach-intl.com. That's AUERBACH-INTL.com. They can either write to me personally, Philip at Auerbach International, Auerbach INTL, and that's PHILIP1L at AUERBACH-INTL.com, or they can call. There is an ancient device that was invented in 1876. It still works extremely well. It is called a telephone. And it's very valuable when you want to talk to people, and talking is often a very good way to communicate. So pick up the phone and call. You don't need necessarily an appointment or, to pre-schedule it. So we've got 2 numbers. They're both on our website, but our California office is 415-592-0042. Our East Coast office is 267-865-6890. Again, they're both on our website. Feel free to call or feel free to write. Whatever you would like, whatever works. Personally, I don't like text messages because I overlook them, or I don't, I sometimes don't look at my cell phone a lot. So again, calling the office or emailing is the best way to do it. You can also write to translations@auerbach-intl.com. That will get to our project managers, and we will be delighted to guide you through the process of getting a free quote and helping you on your way to gaining more impact and more revenue streams and more prosperity and more uplifting, and improving your communication and improving your relationships to impact the world.
And this is amazing. And this information will be definitely, you listen to some podcasts, so it will be definitely below. All of Philip's information will be inside, and the links and everything will be there. So you definitely will not be missing anything should you, continue to follow. So fantastic, Philip. Thank you so much for joining us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining and tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the Fiscally Fabulous podcast and make sure you leave us a review. Until next time, I want you to stay Fiscally Fabulous. Have a good one.
Thank you.
This has been Fiscally Fabulous with Dr. Teresa R. Martin, Esquire. If you would like to learn more on how you can build generational wealth and leave a lasting legacy, go to www.enjoyyourlegacy.com and be sure to subscribe. Thank you for listening. Until next time.